Monday, the 15th of May 2023. This Skidmark is once again one of those what the fuck moments, and I want to apologize to my regular followers that I'm not doing much on the news clips and snippets and collections that I used to do. But we are sitting in a horrific environment in South Africa, and unfortunately a large proportion of the population is totally unaware of the nightmare that is lingering on our doorstep. I am deeply distressed today, and I am struggling to keep my mind focused to make sure that I don't miss important signs. The results that I have seen from that diplomatic balls up from that American diplomat is really disturbing. There are people in South Africa that claim to be analysts and claim to be commentators that are missing the point, and all they are doing is they playing into the hands of the Americans. Now this will come to you as maybe a shock or what, but I'm going to refer to what is in our future as the South African Maidan. Might be technically incorrect, but I think it will serve the purpose. Any person that are open-minded and willing to investigate will understand what the word Maidan means. This color revolution thing is a long words and things like that. Maidan is a little bit more easy to use. We are sitting here today in South Africa with hell on our doorstep, and that evil American cabal sitting in the shithouse in Washington are behind it. And unfortunately, the masses is unaware of what is planned for us. You just have to look at the moon landing farce, which has now been proven. It was a bullshit story. And what they did with the information around the pestilence. Those two items are, for us that is alive today, clear indicators of how powerful the media is as a propaganda tool. And the reality is that basically all the mass media is fully under control of the cabal. And I'm using that word because I cannot use those three letters which starts with a W, because that has also now become a no-no. So, what are we looking at? To get a clearer picture for yourself, you have to look at what happened in the USSR when it collapsed. Basically, all the major important previously state-owned assets landed into the hands of the oligarchs. Now don't make a mistake. All oligarchs are not bad. You have them in basically two groups. You have the capital oligarchs and you have the nationalist oligarchs. And they have their own fight. And in the end it was the nationalist oligarchs that worked with Putin to get Russia back under control and restore law and order. We are sitting today in a system, in a situation where the major fight, yes I call it a fight, is between the G7 and Brics. That is the fight. That is what you must never forget. South Africa is part of Brics, but we have strong G7 ties, and that creates a severely compromised situation. Now, who is going to win? If you are an objective thinker, there is no way that the G7 can win. Brics is the future. That is a fact. And there are South African commentators that are downplaying the importance of Brics. I just listened again this morning to a popular Afrikaans show where the talk is against Brics. They're stupid. They don't see what is going to happen. And they make a big story of the fact that our economic ties to Russia is minute. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? I'll tell you, it is the pro-Western oligarch cabal in South Africa's fault. Instead of warning our manufacturers and producers years ago already to start turning their eyes east, they worked against that. And it ended up with this bullshit what we have today, where the South African economy is basically solidly dependent on G7. And the G7 is a sinking ship. Brics overtook them about 2 months ago in GDP. The big thing is, the new applicants for Brics comprises of more than 80% of the world's population and basically almost 90% of the world's raw materials. And that is a nightmare for the Americans. They don't know how to get out of it. And what will they do? What they always do. Print more dollars and send in the military. That's their solution for every problem. Now what you must keep in mind as a South African, there's a potent American base in Botswana. And information that I have seen is that there are American stealth bombers based in Botswana. Then there's another thing that don't get much information or much air, and that's the size of the UK's base in Lesotho, and the fact that there are an enormously potent helicopter fleet sitting in Lesotho. Think about these things. I'm not going to expand on how we were bamboozled with the pestilence, because it's dangerous for me. But let's come back to a few instances that must make you very nervous. That Lady R story. There is a lot of bullshit around that thing. Most of the informed commentators clearly states that shit were offloaded by that ship. And there are evidence that it was ammunition, and that ammunition was moved to Limpopo. The ammunition is used by our special forces for training, and that ammunition is used in the fight in Mozambique. So, why did we import that? Because our local manufacturers and producers do not produce Russian calibers. We produce NATO calibers. Keep that in mind. Don't let the Lady R thing cloud your vision. Then we had that K.W. Miller with his propaganda about Eskom openly promoting revolution. Go and look. He was out and out fueling fires for unrest. Who can still remember that bomb scare that the American embassy published without talking to our government? Just publish it. And it was a bullshit story. And then Blinken flies into South Africa. Why? To threaten the government. What happened? Naledi Pandor sent him packing, because at least she is intelligent and she does not allow the Americans to intimidate her. Then Yellen came. Why? Obviously, with financial threats. But one thing that's very significant that you must keep in mind of the Yellen visit, she visited the ANC top structure. Not the government, the ANC top structure. Ask yourself why. And then we had Lavrov's visit. And as usual in South Africa, the main players that has the whole media behind them were negative. But the South African government treated him with respect, and we will not know what was discussed. The reality is, ask yourself this question. Why don't you see any interviews with the Russian ambassador to South Africa? Nothing, not a word. The guy from Morning Shot was the only guy that I know of that interviewed the Russian ambassador. Why? Now the major battle is between Brics and the G7 internationally. The dollar is done. The signs are clear. Will it go down in smoke in a day or a week or a month? No, it won't. Because of reasons, there are international instruments and contracts that prevents the, and I'm going to call it the BRICS world, from getting out of the dollar fast. They have to take their time. But the reality is that they are dropping the dollar, and they're dropping it as fast as possible. The dollar was weaponized by the Americans, and now they are paying the price, because the BRICS world decided they're not going to allow the Americans to keep them at ransom with that dollar anymore. And then you get those stupid statements from the EU leaders that Joseph Borrell, Jungle Joseph as Alex called her. Fact of the matter is, on the one hand, he promotes feeding the war machine in the Ukraine. Not a single word about peace. And on the other hand, he threatens China and tries to intimidate Xi Jinping to get Russia to stop the war in Ukraine. That kite is not going to fly. The Russians are fighting NATO and the combined West in Ukraine. They're fighting them because they are a threat to Russia, an existential threat to Russia. So don't bluff yourself and think there's going to be peace talks in the Ukraine and Russia is going to sit and listen to demands from the West. Russia will dictate the peace in the Ukraine. Here in South Africa, Cyril is sitting on the fence. On the one hand, he has received a lot of money from, I'm going to call it the G7. On the other hand, there's major loyalties to Brics. And that is making it difficult for him. The DA is solidly in the camp of the G7 and under control of Schwab and his cronies. That is not a secret anymore. And that is very dangerous for us, the people of South Africa. The pro-G7 mentality made South Africa extremely vulnerable to fear-mongering from the West. And we can see it now. Look at the commentators. They're all telling you how much we're going to lose economically if we pick up a fight with the G7. Whose fault is that? Why didn't the people in control positions warned their producers years ago of this collapse of the G7 that is inevitable. Why? Now South Africa sits with a situation they must find other markets. Reality is there's 80% of the world's population available to them, but they are not focused on entering that market. Why? Because they're part of the cabal and they've been managed by the cabal. But there are producers and manufacturers in South Africa that is already active in the East, and they are the guys that are going to survive. Let me remind you, Madeleine Albright, in an interview, was asked, what about the 500,000 Iraqi children that was killed? And her answer, it was a difficult decision to make, but it was worth it. Let that sink in. It was worth it to kill 500,000 Iraqi children. Let that sink in. Around about 11 million people were killed in the Middle East by American actions and NATO actions. Let that sink in. 11 million. Those countries were bombed into oblivion. Houses were destroyed. Commercial centers were destroyed. Infrastructure were destroyed. They were bombing them into the dark ages. That is what they are willing to do to preserve themselves. Think about that. In South Africa, a massive bombing campaign will mow down the numbers in the black townships at rates that you cannot begin to imagine. Look at the bombs that the Americans have. Imagine that going into squatter camps and things like that. Millions are going to be mowed down. So don't bluff yourself with the numbers. They will reduce the numbers fucking quickly. They have done it and they will do it again. Another question is, in the case of a Maidan in South Africa, who will be the selected leaders? Why do I say selected? Because it is known that the Americans pre-select the regime. I do not understand and I cannot see a clear selection. I cannot see it. Maybe you can. Cyril is going to reach the end of his usefulness very quickly and very soon. Remember that. Steenhuisen is a problem because he's white. But, as the cabal has proven in the past, no problem that cannot be solved by flying through a window. The EFF is out. They are too pro-Russia. There were people that has mentioned to me in some comments that Mbeki might be the selected one. Makes sense, Mbeki is very pro-West and all of that, and he's intelligent and so forth. But the problem is, by selecting him, he will immediately lose the support of the total ANC, because the ANC, by large, is pro-Russia. So, the overall pro-G7 leadership cabal is going to be very difficult to predict. So I think Plan B is going to be the option. And that will mean the total disintegration of the Republic, with the West grabbing the Cape, with the help from the DA and the oligarchs. And they will grab Eskom as well. Eskom will be the tool to control the potential independent republics that will come to life. Because you control the energy and you control them. The Cape squatters is a weapon. Remember that. The cabal is going to use them to ignite the unrest in the Cape, get it out of control, and then roll in with peacekeepers. And they're going to kill those squatters by the millions. Listen to what I'm saying. These people don't blink an eye to kill high numbers. So those squatters has been imported to the Cape with a plan. Think about that. The dark horse in the race here is our nationalist oligarchs. Who are they? Well, I've got two things to bring to mind. One, the food producers. Traditionally, our food producers are independent farmers. Think about that. And then the next thing, and this is very important, who controls the private security? We know that private security in South Africa exceeds the abilities of the police and the military combined. But the cabal is not in charge of the private security. They may have a few agents here and there, but at its core, the private security cares for South Africa. The Americans are going to burn their fingers here with a Maidan stunt. But I have a feeling the Cape is actually all they want. And so specifically, Simonstown and the two air bases, the one at Langebaan and the one in Cape Town. That is what they need to control the sea route. And that is what the fight is about. The strategic sea route past the Cape. All of us know how easy it was to block the Suez Canal with one ship. Think about that. The Cape Sea Route is going to be vitally important. Vital. And trust me, I am confident that that was one of the main reasons why China and Russia pulled South Africa into Brics. That was the main reason. And China and Russia is not going to sit idly and watch the West grab the Cape. That you can be 100% sure of. And that specific thing will be why South Africa can just like that become a Ukraine. That is what is on the cards. Because the fight is going to be brutal. There's no way that Brics can allow the Americans to control the Cape. They will not allow it. And if you doubt what I'm saying, think objectively. Go and look at the military might of Brics. America is not a match. China has got bigger production capacity than the total West combined. Russia has got a formidable military production capacity. Northern Korea, Iran, all of them are major producers, which we never knew because the Western media kept that away from us. But that is the realities. The West cannot make it against Brics. They cannot, unless they bring in nuclear weapons, but then we're all fucked in any case. The nuclear is a no-win, and that's it. And Russia and China knows it very well. But there are reckless fuckers in New York that think, in Washington, that thinks they can survive a nuclear attack. They think they can survive. But think about this on this Monday morning. The deck are being stacked. The board, the pieces are being set up on the boards. The fight is about the Cape Sea Route. And the fight is between Brics and G7. And we can very easily become the African Ukraine. Why the hell is the Americans so after the South African government? Because of the diplomatic influence in Africa that South Africa has. Africa is basically turning against the West as a bloc, and that is a major nightmare. The Americans are losing grip in the Middle East. They're losing grip in Africa. The Americans are losing grip everywhere. The Middle East, Africa, and South America. But look at the levels of chaos that they are conducting today in Pakistan and in Sudan. And they are setting the table to do the same thing in South Africa. South Africans better wake up. This is not about race. This is about survival. And the future of our children and grandchildren is not with the West. The West is done. But lots of people will differ from me, and I understand that. The fact of the matter is, a South African Maidan is on the cards, and very, very, very possible. You'll have to think very carefully about your alliances. Think about that, because it is going to be brutal if this thing happens. And I'm not sure what the end goal will be, but what I know, and I'm very sure of, is the Americans are going to do everything possible to get the Cape. So you guys that are working for independence in the Cape, you've got a problem. You're up against America. You're not going to make it. You better talk to the Russians. Otherwise, disaster is on your doorstep. So, I'm going to end this now. If you differ from me, put it in the comments. If you agree with me, share the thing. But South Africa need to wake up. The Americans is planning a Maidan for South Africa, and they have played already. They've played their cards. They do this according to a playbook. And in my mind, they are very close to the last page in that playbook. They have created chaos amongst our political leaders and social commentators. They have installed fear with their bomb scare and Lady R bullshit and the threat of breaking trade relations. The fear is there. So the next move is action. Go and look what they did in Kiev in 2014. Go and look what they did in Odessa in 2014. Go and look what they did to the Donbass since 2014. Don't be fooled. And never forget, they don't care if millions are killed in the process. Please give me a like, and share the thing. And subscribe. My channel is a small channel, but I have to get my message out. There are people that need to hear what I'm saying. Our main mystery is who will be the selected regime. Answer that one and you'll see a clearer picture. Have a nice day.